Okay. Hi, everyone. This is the executive meeting for Tuesday, July 27th, 2021. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 10:07 a.m. We'll go on to the Territorial Acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that Sfss is located on the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Cohomish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Katzie nations. Unceded means that these territories have never been handed over, sold, or given up by these nations, and we are currently situated on occupied territories, and that I encourage people to always do your own research and do unlearning as well, and not always have the labor on Indigenous folks, and that we do our best to stand in solidarity and call in people when they're saying out of the line things. So moving on, we'll go on to roll call of attendance. The current president is currently on leave of absence, so we'll move on to the vice chair, VP Events and Student Affairs. Hi everyone, my name is Jess. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and all my access needs are met. VP External and Community Affairs, Matthew Provost.
Okay, hello, this is Matt. My pronouns are he, him, his. As of right now, my accessibility needs, I'm going to be eating, so I'm going to keep my camera off, and I'll turn it on in a bit. I also may have to leave just before noon, just so I can make it home to chair ECA committee because I didn't bring all of my charger up here, so.
VP Equity and Sustainability has sent in her regrets, so we'll move on to VP Finance and Services. Almas?
Yeah, I was just trying to type it down. Oh no, it's lost. Okay. My name is Almis, pronounced she, her, hers. All my accessibility needs are met, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Almas. VP Internal and Organizational Development.
Hi everyone, my name is Corbett. Pronouns are he, him, his, and access needs are met. Thank you.
And VP University and Academic Affairs.
Hey everyone, my name is Serena. My pronouns are she, they. For access needs, I think they're met other than, I guess I have a bit of brain fog today, so if I don't respond, just let me know.
We'll move on to society staff. Our operations organizer, Aisha Khan, does not look like that she is here today, nor is our board organizer, Ella Droko, but we can move on to our administrative assistant.
Hello everyone, my name is Joseph, pronouns he, him, his, and all my access needs are met.
Thank you, Joseph. And we have regrets from our VP Equity and Sustainability, Marie Haddad, for today. Moving on, we'll go to consent agenda 4.1. Be it resolved to adopt the consent agenda by unanimous consent. If you'd like to abstain or dissent, please use the raise hand on the Zoom. Cool, thank you. Next, we'll move on to item 5, adoption of the agenda. The motion reads, be it resolved to adopt the agenda as presented. Can I have a mover?
Matt?
Can I have a seconder?
Corbett.
Are there any discussion items to the adoption of the agenda? Serena.
Yeah, I just want to amend the agenda to include one motion. It's kind of time sensitive, but it won't let me copy paste. So it's titled Endorsing Rise Events. And I'll just put it in the Google document actually, because it won't let me copy paste into the chat for whatever reason.
So Serena is referring to this document. So I will read the amendment titled Endorsing RISE Events, whereas RISE SFU is supporting 2 online events titled Liberation for Palestine, Collective Action and Solidarity, and quote, Settler Colonialism in Palestine, a History and Investigation of Colonial Aggression, unquote, occurring on July 28, 2021 and July 30th, 2021. Whereas these events have been organized by supporters of IJV, Youth Bloc, RISE SFU, Students for Justice in Palestine SFU, and the Caucus. Whereas RISE SFU is currently a club of the Sfss and thus receives funding from the Sfss, whereas the Sfss IP-8 anti-racism policy states that the Sfss believes in working towards dismantling all forms of oppression, which includes but is not limited to colonialism and racism. Whereas the Sfss Council on May 19, 2021 passed a motion titled, quote, Sfss Response to the Israeli Colonization of Palestine, unquote, which stated that the Sfss stands in solidarity with Palestinian students at SFU. Whereas the Sfss Council released a statement on June 10, 2021, stating that the Sfss pledges to initiate, support, and amplify campaigns in solidarity with Palestinian calls to join the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions (BDS) movement against Israeli apartheid. Be it resolved that the Sfss endorse the 2 online events titled, quote, Liberation for Palestine, Collective Action and Solidarity, unquote, and quote, Settler Colonialism in Palestine, a History and Investigation of Colonial Aggression, occurring on July 28, 2021 and July 30th, 2021. Be it further resolved that the Sfss will promote said events on all social media channels. Can I have a mover for this batch of amendments?
Serena.
Can I have a seconder?
Corbett seconds.
Now we move back to the main motion. Be it resolved to adopt the agenda as amendment. Is there any discussion? Oh, yes.
We actually have to vote on the amendment first to say that's approved, then we go back to the main motion.
Cool, thanks, Corbett. Seeking unanimous consent on the amendments. Okay, so if you don't want to, wait, you're losing my train of thought. Okay, seeing as there is no someone not abstaining or dissenting, I'm gonna move back to the main motion. Be it resolved to adopt the agenda as amended.
Sorry, saying the motion passed.
Yes.
The agenda. Okay.
Oh,
just
yeah.
say that.
Yeah, I had a list because I wanted to I wanted to amend the agenda to include, I guess, an area for regrets from Marie, because we need to include that.
We already did that in the roll call of attendance 3.3 regrets.
No, we already have a motion for that in the agenda. I made sure to have it added.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yes. Yes, she sent it in. That's okay. No, that's okay. So we'll move back to the main motion. Be it resolved to adopt the agenda as amended. Matt, are you abstaining or dissenting against this motion?
I hate this hand feature.
Is there any discussion on this motion? Okay, we shall put this motion to a vote. All those in favor of the motion seeking unanimous consent. If you choose to abstain or dissent, please use the Zoom raise hand feature. And the motion is carried as amended. Next, we'll go on to item 6, updates. So 6.1, SFSS exec co-ops. Corbett, I believe that's you.
It is, yes. Okay, so I just want to do a quick update. I have finally got the job descriptions made up for the different executive positions, and they included things like compensation and reporting structure. And I sent it to Muriel from SFU Co-op to get that entered into her system, so that we can, if those that are interested in claiming this term and future terms as co-ops, they can do so. Next steps for me would be also additionally checking with her to make sure when that's done, so we can let you all know, as well as submitting potential funding subsidies for whoever is any of the domestic students that are claiming a co-op. No guarantee we'll get anything, but anything we can get it saves us money. So I'll let you know how that goes.
Are there any comments or discussions? I have one. I'm on the list. Corbett, do you think this will be ready for the fall semester? We
Also be
can't.
backclaimed for the summer.
We got cut off in the beginning. Can you repeat?
All right. I'm hoping, I believe so, and I'm hoping that we can also backclaim it for the summer. I hope it's not too late to do that. For anyone who's interested in backclaiming for the summer, you'll have to pay the additional fee, of course, but depending on your cert scenario, it might be to your benefit.
Are there any comments or questions for the SFSS exec co-ops? Okay, we'll move on to SFSS emergency response plan submitted by me. So last week, some executive members and Lacey from the First Nation Student Association met to go through the emergency response plan that was created, at least the first version was created April 2020 by John, and had some comments from what was then called the board. And the executives of that board as well. So what we did was just look through the document and provide feedback. Overall, we saw that there was a lack of response to overdose and mental health crisis. Questions arising such as what staff is trained in mental health first aid, talking about security, how we don't want to use security, and instead could we have a mental health first aid crisis, like possibly even nurse or someone who's actually trained in this. Because there is reference to the BIPOC committee and their commitments to anti-racism efforts, so we want to align those two as well. There is also a lack of inclusion of disabled folks, and some wording that is kind of just, that needs to be changed, that we don't think is appropriate. So when John gets back from his vacation on August 4th, we'll provide him the initial feedback details. As for the timeline, so from July 19th to 23rd, some of us skimmed through the document and provided their feedback. This week from July 26th to the 30th, I'm going to make sure that there's more detailed feedback, and then that Lacey is going to send us a list of resources for BIPOC folks. And then between August 2 and 4, we'll have and submit any lingering comments and feedback, and then we'll meet with John this week or either next week when he comes back to finalize the details. As for consultation, we also want to see consultation from Araba, the SOCA Black Student Support Coordinator. And other things that we found that were missing from this document is about stalking and harassment, so anyone feeling unsafe. We also were wondering where the document is of the agreement between SVSPO and SFSS, or under SFU, not too sure, over the sexual harassment plan in 2019. Other things that are missing are about gun threats, hazardous spill, emergency lockdowns, cardiac arrest, and in the event, like let's say the tank farm explodes or there's an incident, and what do we do? Other questions that we have is, are we planning to train building coordinators and assistants or managers, or even our staff in basic first aid? My question is if we're going to have any like run-throughs of these emergency response plans. So for example, an emergency, what would we do in a lockdown, and how to actually actively do that? Like what we used to do in high school, if you remember, like drills, emergency drills. Are there any questions or comments on this discussion item? Corbett.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about timeline. How much, like how, sort of when will we plan to have much of the consultations started or hopefully done by?
I don't know if I still use the Zoom chat if I'm chair, so I'm just gonna hop. Okay, that was weird. I could email Arapa this week for just to send them the document and then provide any comments directly on the feedback. So technically we have 2 weeks left for the feedback, and then once John comes back, we'll work with him on it. Almas?
So like you said that we're going to give more detailed feedback. Can we just assess the document on our own time and do that? Or are we planning to have another meeting to collectively give that feedback?
So the feedback initially was done on your own time, and then once you have compiled a list of our own feedback, that's when we present it to the bigger team so we can see any similarities or differences. So I encourage you folks, all of the execs, to look at this, to continue to look at it, because you folks have been on your own time, and then we'll come back later on and I'll set up a meeting either when John comes back or right before.
Okay, sounds good.
So the speaker list looks like it's been exhausted, so I'll move on to item 6.3, in-person events. This is just an update on the Sfss in-person event guidelines and checklist that had our support from VP External, President, and VP Events, and a lot of our staff as well. So thank you everyone for working on it. It's going to be submitted today to the communications team and be posted on the relevant social media channels, websites, and club portals so that students can apply and submit this checklist so that we know the events that they're having, where is it, when is it, how many people are there going to be, obviously with a limit of 25 because that is our strong recommendation. Our staff also ordered supplies such as masks and hand sanitizer. We also included a contact tracing list for COVID safety as well. And that is finally done. So that should be posted up soon. So student unions and clubs and constituency groups can have in-person events external to the sub. Are there any comments or questions on this discussion item? Okay, moving on to item 6.5. Sorry, 6.4, hiring committee updates. We'll just go in a circle. First on my screen is Matt. Matt, are you able to give an update on your hiring committees?
Oh yeah, sorry, I was just opening up the email quick, and I'm gonna turn on my camera. Yeah, so on the CAMC hiring committee, unfortunately, I do not have the capacity to finish. But what the good news is on that committee is that I was able to finish up the questions for scheduling like the first interviews and also the second interviews, because I wanted there to be a specific process, like especially with the campaigns coordinator. One thing that I wanted to do with the second round of interviews was to actually have the candidate give us like a presentation, around a 20-minute presentation on how they would actually execute a campaign from start to finish and show us all the logistics on how they would find their information and work with folks. So that's kind of what I outlined. I contacted Aisha, spoke with them yesterday, and they're going to be replacing me on this hiring committee. So, and that is effective immediately. I sent an email, and from the execs, it was approved. And then Aisha is taking care of the back end in collage. So hopefully with the CAMC coordinator, it'll be done in the next few weeks. Marie reached out to candidates, and those interviews just need to be scheduled, and then it should be okay. So that's my update.
Thank you. And I'll go next from the Women's Center Coordinator Women's Center Assistant Hiring Committee. We have one more interview left tomorrow. We did a total of 4 interviews. Then we'll regroup with the hiring committee to finalize the candidate. Between today and the last interview, I asked Marie to do reference calls, so I'll go check up on her, how those have been doing. And then I think their start date is sometime in August when Athena returns from vacation. Serena.
For the out on campus programs assistant, we basically decided on the successful candidate. I think Marie was going to do a reference check and that kind of thing and let them know, but I need to follow up with her about that. In regards to the admin assistant hiring committee, we unfortunately couldn't find a lot of availability over the last couple of weeks. So I've sent out a bunch of meeting times for this week and next week as a whole. So we just have to confirm the questions that we all collectively came up with and schedule some interviews.
Corbett?
So yeah, I'm on the building coordinator hiring committee. We have completed our interviews and hiring process for the full-time building coordinators. So we have 2 people hired. And the second, we are doing interviews for the part-time building coordinators right now. We hope to finish this week. So hopefully by next week, we'll be able to make a more full announcement. And for the administrative coordinator hiring committee, the union has submitted their people, and I will be working with Ella to get that up and running and going.
Thank you, Corbett. And Almas, are you on any hiring committees?
No, I'm not on any hiring committees yet, but before Gabe left, he asked me to be a part of one, which will be starting next month, I guess.
And what was that committee, Almas?
Let me just go back to my email and see. Just one second.
So in the meantime, Corbett, can you repeat, please, the last hiring committee you mentioned?
Administrative coordinator.
Thank you, Corbett. And Almas, we'll just wait for you to let us know the hiring committee.
Yeah, just one second.
So Almas, maybe just put it in the chat once you find it, and we'll move on to item 6.5, change from the COVID-19 safety plan to the safe operating plan, which was submitted by Corbett.
Yeah, so as exec knows, we passed a motion through email to move us from the COVID-19 safety plan that we've been using for the majority of the pandemic to a sub safe operating plan, which has been approved or been reviewed and approved by staff, and it's just a pretty straightforward list of 7 guidelines to follow when you are in the sub. And it's on a poster, and we can post it all around when John gets back. So that's really about it.
Thank you, Corbett. And it looks like Almas is still in the process of finding the committee name. So thank you, Almas, for submitting the first one. And I look forward to seeing the second one. We'll go on to item 7, report from subcommittees. 7.1, report from HR and Personnel Subcommittee, which was submitted by President Gabe Leosis, who is currently on leave. So I don't know if anyone can fill in for this if they know any information.
Sorry, can you say the thing again?
Yeah, so this is a report from HR and Personnel Subcommittee. I don't know if anyone knows anything about this to contribute. If not, we can postpone it to next exec meeting. Corbin.
Yeah, I think it's just reporting what the subcommittee did on its last meeting, which I believe was approving some of the, sorry, actually, you know what? I'm not going to say, I'm going to actually look to see what the actual minutes were. So we can move on to the next, and then I come back to this.
Okay, we can come back to it. We'll move on to item 8, new business, 8.1, acting staff liaison officer appointment extension, submitted by President Gabe Leosis. The motion reads as, whereas the Vice President Internal and Organizational Development was appointed as acting staff liaison officer while the President was on a leave of absence from July 17th to the 25th, whereas the President's leave of absence was extended to July 31st. Be it resolved to extend the appointment of the Vice President Internal and Organizational Development as acting staff liaison officer to July 31st. Can I have a mover?
Corbett moves.
Can I have a seconder? Can I have a seconder?
Matt.
Okay, thanks. Is there any discussion on the motion? Corbett, how's the presidency life treating you?
It's not been that much because, you know, Gabe picked a good time, but it's just more just the idea of like just more things to try to schedule and be aware of. That's all. So.
Corbett, you've been doing an exceptional job, so thank you for all your work. Okay, is there any other discussion? Seeing as it has been exhausted, I will put the question to a vote. All those in favor seeking unanimous consent. If you choose to abstain or dissent, please use the raise hand function in Zoom. And the motion is carried. Congratulations, Corbett. Okay. We'll move on to 8.2, titled Sfss Required Return to Work. This is submitted by President Gabe Leosis, and there was an attachment, existing Sfss COVID-19 safety plan. The motion reads as follows, whereas Sfss staff members participated in a mandatory input survey regarding the sub-return to office plan, and when staff were comfortable being required to work in person rather than remotely. Whereas the final result of the survey indicated that an overwhelming majority of staff feel that while, quote, public health orders have changed, I need time to transition to the new normal. Attendance should remain optional until August 27th. From August 30th onward, based on a minimum staffing requirement, I would prefer to sign up for dates to work in the sub, unquote. Be it resolved that the Executive Committee approve the results of the staff survey and that attendance remain optional in the Student Union building until August 27th, 2021. Be it further resolved that starting August 30th to September 27th, attendance in the building shall be required based on a minimum staffing requirement in each staff department as determined by the President and Operation Organizer in consultation with each department. Can I have a mover?
Corbett moves.
Can I have a seconder?
Matt.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Matt.
Yeah, I'm just thinking since Gabe submitted this, like I don't know, Corbett, you probably know like a little bit about this, but one thing I just wanted to ask about, um, like from August 30th to September 27th, like I will have to talk to Gabe about this too, and probably Aisha, but honestly, I think it should probably be for like the whole fall semester, not just for like a month, like because it's gonna be. And the thing is, like, it's gonna be busy like the whole time. You know what I mean? Because fall and September is the busiest month, and we're also gonna be navigating like when everybody wants to come in here, and even with like a minimum like staffing like requirement. And like we won't know those numbers until those discussions happen, like with all departments and our staff and everything like that. But I think that um you know, they should be able to wait. Yeah, like I don't know, it's just kind of, I feel like it should be up to them as long as we have enough staff and they're okay with alternating. But also, I know that there's a bunch of hiring committees on. So after those hires, it might be a little bit different, but we might be short staffed until all those positions are filled. So those are my thoughts.
So, okay, I'm going to move backwards a bit just for that this is on record. The hiring committee that Almas is on is called Bullying and Harassment Manager Hiring Committee. So thank you, Almas. And we still can't find the other one, and that's okay. We'll figure out for next executive meeting. The next person on the speakers list is Corbett.
Yeah, what I kind of see it is basically once the building is soft opened on August 23rd, that we'll have more staff coming in more regularly, to the point, and minimum staff requirements will be basically like I think in most cases, especially front facing staff, like member services, the building assistants, building coordinators and stuff would be in all the time, would be in for their every day, pretty much, for full coverage. Some positions like finance and communications, some of the other ones that are more organized support could probably do a bit more remote from home. But we will be working with staff to communicate what that looks like from people coming back and how much minimum staff requirements will be needed. But yeah, our big thing is that's why we're trying really hard right now to make sure like the out on campus coordinator roles filled by the end of before September. All the building coordinator roles are filled before September, and ideally we'll be hiring building assistants as well. Either some before September or by maybe some partially, and we'll do our best to get that finished.
I think for the front-facing staff, I think their presence on campus is really important to be during this time, just because clubs and student unions are coming back and expecting more support for any meetings or events that they host in person and within the sub, and to look for room booking policies, help with events and setting up and all of that stuff. So I think Corbett and Gabe, well, Gabe's not here, so Corbett, I guess we're just going to look into more logistics for this and how they actually return to campus, and working with Aisha on this as well.
Yes, yeah, and John and relevant admin staff for it.
Matt.
Yeah, like I am in favor like of this motion, and I feel like it makes sense to me and like why it's needed. I just think that like there shouldn't be like a date. Like it should just say starting August 30th instead of having September 27th, because even I don't remember who told me, but the other day like there was over 100 COVID cases like yesterday or something like that. So I just don't want there to be like I don't know, hard dates when we don't know, when stuff fluctuates. I just think we should keep it open. I just feel like that's like the safest option, because then, like, with influx of people coming here, or like, well, at on campus, and with stuff changing, like, we know how fast stuff changes. I just don't want us to be in a position where we have to like make a new motion or like do something at exec or council, like in an emergency situation when it's hard to do. So that's just why I'm thinking of that, just to have it open. And if we do need to have a date, then just put it for like the duration of like the fall semester, because stuff will be up and down. Like some weeks, a lot of staff might want to come in, and other weeks, like, they might not feel like it is required, and we won't know until like we see how many students like are coming in here, which I believe it's going to be like a lot. But those are just things that like I'm thinking about, because I just don't want to put us in a situation where like we have to do like something that's out of nowhere because the fluctuation of cases and stuff gets shut down, and all of that. That's just what I'm thinking of.
Corbett has a direct response.
Yeah, no, I agree with your concerns, Matt. And yeah, well, I monitor the COVID cases every day, as some of you know, because I post them a lot. But we also have been hearing from staff, me and John and others have heard from staff too, that they need something more consistent, like something more firm on when they should be coming in, because, and so me and others will keep an eye on COVID cases and any provincial health orders stuff, and we'll communicate if as early as we can if we have to make changes. So hopefully there won't be big emergency shifts. Yeah.
Are there any other comments or questions for this motion? Serena.
Just give me a second to read the last clause again. I'm just. So then it doesn't like say that after September 27th that folks would have to return. So would that be something that we rediscuss at the end of September, or am I missing something?
Could you repeat what you asked?
So the last bit for the resolve clause says that starting August 30th to September 27th, attendance in the building shall be required on a minimum staffing requirement in each staff department as determined by the president and operations organizer in consultation with each department, but it doesn't discuss what's going to happen after September 27th, right? Is that correct? Like, so could we revisit this discussion at the end of September?
Corbett.
Yeah, I believe so. We'd reevaluate if things go well in the sense of COVID numbers and our staffing counts and our everything else, like kind of like best case scenario. Then we would just go back to full in-person staff, like more or less maximum staff on site. With but we'd still want to be talking about like where can we work in staff do remote days and stuff when necessary. But yeah, we definitely reevaluation and new recommendations going after that.
It also says in the last bit for the resolve clause that will be based on a minimum staffing requirement in each staff department. So I still don't think that it will be maximum return of each staff in each department. And then that's why we'll have to probably revisit it after September 27th, just like what Corbett said. Almas.
So are we also planning to give people the option, because it says minimum, to just continue working from home? Because I feel like the last time we discussed when is the firm date for having to attend mandatory meetings in person, according to SFU, I feel like it's somewhere in November, if I'm not wrong. I think Serena knows better, but as far as I know, it's somewhere in November. So are we only wanting to bring those people to campus who are absolutely necessity, like it's a necessity for us to have them there, or we're encouraging everyone to go back? Like, I'm not clear with that.
Corbett.
So yeah, minimum will depend on each individual department and what tasks need to be done on what days. So for a good example is finance. There's specific days where they have to do they do check runs. Specific days they do payroll approvals and such. That doesn't necessarily mean that both Kurt and David need to be in the office the same day, unless it works out that way. I believe also the idea of like this minimum aspect was so that we could still have rotating, like still have not as many people in the building in case there is increases in COVID and stuff. There's less chance of any kind of spread because there's just less people interacting with each other and being in closer quarters, so to speak. But it will have to vary based on each department. So for instance, member services, I would assume would need more people on campus or in the sub from day to day, simply because to meet more students and staff and such. However, they can still be spread out between two or three different locations. So there's still an aspect of safety there. If they are able to do work remotely, then that's fine as well. It just really depends. It will have to be very tailored based on each department and evaluated regularly.
Sounds good. Yeah, I was just confused if it's like mandatory for people to come in, or it is based on what we require, like what's absolutely needed. Because I know some people don't even have to come in, like they're working from home at the same capacity that they would in person. So I'm not sure how it's going to work for them.
Corbett.
Kind of work they're doing, like once the sub is open again and we're more back on campus, service delivery will change too. So a lot of services right now are being done remotely, but like a lot of them will change over to either be done in person or a mixture of person and remotely. And so it will vary. So yeah, like I can't really give you any specifics until we actually have those sit downs with those departments.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other last comments or questions on this motion? Seeing as the discussion has now been exhausted, I will put the question to a vote. All those in favor seeking unanimous consent. If you choose to abstain or dissent, please use the raise hand function in Zoom. I'm just going to say that again because Almas just came back in the Zoom call after dropping out. So Almas, the discussion has now been exhausted. I'm going to put the question to a vote. All those in favor seeking unanimous consent. If you choose to abstain or dissent, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. The motion is carried unanimously. Moving on to 8.3, appointing employer representatives to the Building Assistant Hiring Committee, submitted by President Gabe Leosis, and the proposed building assistant job description was attached to this. The motion reads as be it resolved to appoint X to the Building Assistant Hiring Committee as employer representatives. Can I have a mover?
Serena.
Serena moves. Can I have a seconder?
Corbett seconds.
Corbett seconds. Does anyone know any information about this? Because I don't. Corbett.
Yeah, so the building assistants are going to be either student prioritized hires or people that are willing to do part-time shift work. They are there to support the building coordinators and support the running of the building. So they'll be primarily stationed at the Go desk and being the first point of contact for inquiries, issues, whatnot. So inquiries could be like, where's bathrooms, where's this room, where's this person's office, etc. Issues being like there's a AV issue in one of the rooms, or they're having problems connecting to the network or whatnot. And they would then delegate, or they would then pass on relevant information. So if they have to escalate it to the building coordinator, or if they have to say a person's looking for, they want to meet with Nancy for to go over a club thing, then they can direct them to the student center. And so their design, the role is there's multiple roles. I think 6 to 7 or so potential hires based on hours, because like students, it's some hours some weeks they can do 5 hours a week, sometimes they do 10 or more. So it depends on the semester. So it's more like a pool of hours that we're trying to hire for. The building coordinator roles are pretty close to being hired out. We need to have the assistants hired, ideally some before semester starts, because we want to make sure that the mornings and evening shifts are covered for sure, so that the building coordinators, when they come in to work, they're not going to be by themselves. Yeah, that's really all about it. We just need to have a couple people put onto this hiring committee to assist in hiring these individuals.
Thank you, Corbett, for the rundown. So we do need 2 employer representatives on this hiring committee, correct? Okay.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So does anyone have the capacity to be on the building assistant hiring committee? If not, my suggestion would be to bring this to council and see if any counselors would want to be on this committee. Corbett and Almas.
Yeah, I don't have capacity myself, but as a backup, we can always maybe ask John to see if he's available when he comes back from his vacation as a backup.
And Almas?
Yeah, I think it was the building assistant hiring committee that Gabe was speaking to me about, but he said we won't be finalizing on like who the 2 employee representatives are until he's back. Like he just gave me a heads up that this is the new committee that's coming up. So if you have the capacity, you can hop on.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention that check even with some of our AVPs if they're able to, because then they could throw in some of their hours here, and this could just be something that they take on for the next little while up until it's done and just until it's completed. So I would just check with those folks as well.
I think I agree, and that we might just need to wait until Gabe and Corbett come back. Sorry, oh my goodness, Gabe and John to come back, and then we can probably finalize this. Either we wait and maybe let's bring this to council. Almas was on the speaker list. Go ahead.
Also, do we have a timeline for this one? Because I feel like it's easier to make a decision if somebody wants to be on the committee if we have a timeline.
Corbett?
Not a firm timeline yet, because we're still waiting from approval of the JD from the union. But we do need to have some people hired by the very latest the end of April. And the reason being, well, it will take, okay, so normally any externally sought jobs take, you meet, it takes a couple weeks often to, even if you meet quickly and you get stuff out for posting, you still have to hold for at least 2 weeks for people to apply. And then it takes around up to 1 to 2 weeks to do the interviewing and decision making. So it's gonna, it's probably, unfortunately, it's probably going to be until maybe even earlier mid-September before we get some people hired. But if we can get at least a few out early, that would be really helpful.
So as a correction, I
Did I
think
say end of
meant,
April?
I think you meant end of
Sorry,
August.
end of August.
Okay.
Yeah. I didn't even notice.
I know, it's okay. Should we amend this motion or should we just postpone this motion?
I think it's fine to put somebody. We can always, if we need to change, we can always do another motion to swap people out. It'd be nice for us to, if some people are already interested, no problem, right? Like, doesn't hurt anything.
So I'd like to put 2 names forward as for the Sfss employer side. Almas Pangura and John Walsh. Almas, do you consent to being on this hiring committee for now, and then if any changes are made? Oh, Corbett.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't put John on until we actually get a chance to talk to him. So just Almas would be best.
Maybe just Almas. Almas, do you consent to having your to be on this hiring committee?
Yeah, I do. And then I think I will just go ahead with the timeline just to see it's not clashing with any of my final exams. Like if we can absolutely not move it around, then I think we can just come back to it again.
So with hiring committees, interviews, and any meetings that you have while being on the hiring committee, you can always fit it in with around your schedule, anything like that, just being flexible with the people that you work with on your committee as well. But it is doable to be on a hiring committee with this job and while being in school. Okay, so I want to make an amendment to the motion to replace X with with VP Finance and Services, comma, Almas Pangura. Be it resolved to appoint VP Finance and Services Almas Pangura to the Building Assistant Hiring Committee as employer representatives. Can I have a mover for this amendment?
Serena?
Sarita moves. Can I have a seconder for this amendment?
Almas?
Alma seconds. Now we'll move back to the, no, we have to seek unanimous consent, right, Corbett, on the amendment?
Yeah, you have to seek you have to have the amendment passed before you can actually go back and vote on it properly.
Seeking unanimous consent on the motion as amended. If you choose to abstain or dissent, please use the raise hand function. Okay, we'll move back to the main motion. The main motion reads as be it resolved to appoint VP Finance and Services Almas Pangura to the Building Assistant Hiring Committee as employee representatives. Seeking unanimous consent. If you choose to abstain, please use the raise hand Zoom. Okay, the motion is carried as amended unanimously. Okay, we'll do one more motion and then we will take a 5-minute break and then move on to the discussion items. We'll move on to 8.4, submitted by Serena Baines, titled Endorsing RISE Events. Whereas RISE SFU, the motion reads as, whereas RISE SFU is supporting 2 online events titled, quote, Liberation for Palestine, a collective action and solidarity, unquote, and quote, settler colonialism in Palestine, a history and investigation of colonial aggression, unquote, occurring on July 28th, 2021 and July 30th, 2021. Whereas these events have been organized by supporters of IJV, Youth Bloc, RISE SFU, Students for Justice in Palestine SFU, and the Caucus. Whereas RISE SFU is currently a club of the Sfss and thus receives funding from the Sfss. Whereas the Sfss IP-8 anti-racism states that the Sfss believes in working towards dismantling all forms of oppression, which includes but is not limited to colonialism and racism. Whereas the Sfss Council on May 19th, 2021, passed a motion titled, quote, Sfss response to the Israeli colonization of Palestine, unquote, which stated that the Sfss stands in solidarity with Palestinian students at SFU, whereas the Sfss Council released a statement on June 10th, 2021, stating that the Sfss pledges to initiate, support, and amplify campaigns in solidarity with Palestinian calls to join the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions, BDS, movement against Israeli apartheid. Be it resolved that the SFSS endorse the 2 online events titled, quote, Liberation for Palestine, Collective Action and Solidarity, and, quote, Settler Colonialism in Palestine, A History and Investigation of Colonial Aggression, unquote, occurring on July 28th, 2021 and July 30th, 2021. Be it further resolved that the SFSS will promote said events on all social media channels. Can I have a mover of this motion?
Serena.
Can I have a seconder? I can second. Is there any discussion on this motion? Serena.
Yeah, I can speak to this motion briefly. It's pretty straightforward. RISE is supporting a couple of events regarding, it's like a kind of like a series on Palestine and standing in solidarity with Palestine. I guess because it's done in support with other organizations that are outside the SFSS, that they need our permission to use the SFSS logo and have us endorse it. This was actually an item that Murray brought to me, and then since Murray couldn't come today, I'm bringing it forward. So I don't have the most knowledge on it, but that's my understanding of it. Hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you. Yes, I've been in communication with the caucus, who has been helping plan this event as well. And then I can help promote it on the SFSS_events Instagram page too. And I put it on some email lists to be sent out as promotion. Are there any discussion items? Sorry, is there any other discussion, comments or questions on this motion before we vote? Seeing as there's nothing left, we shall put this motion to a vote. All those in favor, seeking unanimous consent. If you choose to abstain, please use the Zoom raise hand function. The motion is carried unanimously. We will be taking a 5-minute break. So see you then. Bye-bye.
Back at 1:09.
Cool, thank you. So we'll move on to section 9, discussion items, 9.1, hiring committee. Oh, did we do this already? Hold on. We're not going to do 9.1 or 9.2 because we talked about them already in updates. So we'll move on to 9.3, SUDS attendees, Almas. Or we might have to postpone that to next executive meeting, or if there's anything written, just give me a second. Okay, I can go read something that Almas put in another document for the SUDS attendees discussion. So she went to the meeting and there was an introduction to the working group. Questions like how to make investment in transportation over the next 10 years more beneficial to folks. How is the new vision aimed at improving connectivity, dealing with the climate crisis, moving away from fossil fuel run vehicles, and better the safety standards? Increased attention to completing the city's walking and biking networks. There was a survey about feedback and suggestion on the 4-fold plan laid out by the city. Previous wins, sorry, Corbett. This is 9.4, Surrey Transportation Plan. Let's just finish this and then I'll move on to 9.3. I'm really sorry, Joseph. So for the record, we scratched out 9.1 and 9.2 because they were under updates. We then moved on to 9.4, Surrey Transportation Plan, which is what I'm currently reading right now, and we'll go back to SUDS attendees. So to continue 9.4, Surrey Transportation Plan, there were previous wins, how it will help SFU and KPU students, and discussion on how to make it more accessible for all folks. And there was a discussion between different attendees about the questions that they had. And then there were attached links and files that Almas has sent via email. And Almas, would you like to add to this discussion?
Yeah, sorry. I was actually driving back home, so I couldn't speak. It was more like a presentation. And the end of it just had a couple of people asking questions. So it was more like a one-way thing where they were telling us about their plans. And in the very end, they gave us a survey to fill out about what we felt about it, which I did end up filling out. But other than that, there was not much. And I think you've already read out the whole summary of what was there in the meeting. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Almas. Are there any other comments or questions? Almas, I guess I have a question. What action items do we need on our end to make sure that this information is available to students, or if that's necessary?
Yeah, sure. You can also use the other resources that I've sent if you need like more information or things in more detail, but I've summarized everything that was discussed. And if you guys need the link to the survey to fill out on your own time, I can send that as well.
Thanks, Almas. We'll move on to item 9.3, Sfss attendees. Corbett, could you explain what Sfss is as well?
Yeah, so I forget what it stands for. Basically, it's an event that's hosted by AMS, UBC, that is a giant leadership conference for student union, things like Student Union Development Summit or something like that, I think is what Sfss stands for. But yeah, generally it's the idea of if they get a number of student union people, student union leaders from all across the country together to go to, it's a conference, so you have various workshops and info sessions and networking opportunities, things like that. And Sfss tends to always send a few people every year. It really varies based on budget and availability and interest. And it's a good idea, I think, to send out other people. I know Matt initially forwarded this on to the exec mail list. So if you have any additional stuff that I missed, please pop in. But what I've said in that email chain was like I recommended based on portfolio based, usually or the president and the VP external go at bare minimum, and that we should also open up this up to everyone in council to give them some opportunities. So, and also that we have, in according to our budget, we have $12,000 set aside for conference attendance. So there might be a few more conferences throughout the year, so we want to like spend it all in one shot, but we can, probably afford to send some people, more people this time around, being it's local.
Are there any comments? Matt?
Yeah, no, I think it'd be like a good opportunity. I know my availability is going to change, so I'm not sure if I will be able to attend. But I can also recommend when I know a little bit more around, I'll get the email, I guess, around local pricing. And then also even for things that are happening, we can also recommend folks from I think it would be good to recommend folks from our committees, like relevant committees as well, to attend some of this stuff, just like how I'll be recommending folks from ECAC if I can't make it for some like lobby days or things like that for permitted to travel or just, in that area. So I would just keep that in mind as well, even if it's not for like SUDS, but for other conferences or other things that'll be happening throughout the year that we usually get invited to.
Thank you, Matt. Almas?
Yeah, I also think that it's important for people to know their availability beforehand because we don't want to be spending money and then realizing that some of the people who've signed up can't make it. So I think before we make a final decision, it's important for us to see, one, if it fits into their portfolios, and secondly, if they're really interested, can they actually make it on that day? Because if they end up having midterms now that we're going back into like fully in-person classes, then we don't want to be wasting like whatever amount of money it is. I think it's $700 or something. Yeah, I don't want to be sounding rude, but this is also something that could happen. It's like spread over 3 days, so you might realize that, okay, there's a person who just cannot go anymore, and we've exhausted part of our budget. It could be used by someone else.
Matt.
Also, in terms of conferences, I know that last year we weren't able to really go to any unless if it was like virtual or something like that. But in terms of people who do get recommended to go, then there should be, well, there is a structure that like there are reports and stuff that are brought back for people who attend. And I think that might need to be some form of, I think on our end, expectations for retreats or development sessions or conferences throughout the year. That might be something we might need to work on as the exec. If folks want to attend, have like a list of expectations that are brought to like council if they want to go or they're making recommendations to go somewhere or to be sent to some of these conferences. They will need to provide a report and let everybody know at council, like in a presentation form, like what happened if it's relevant. So those are just like my things in terms of like accountability and transparency in attendance, that if that's expected for us to go, then whoever is going, that should be expected of them as well.
I think that's a good idea, because then it just doesn't look like you're going there for fun. So we could come up with like a standardized report for any conferences that we go to. And then we can have our comms team probably make it into a document. It would probably already have pre-filled questions. Is that what you were thinking? Matt.
Yeah, like I think there should be like, because like the thing is, it's different now. It's not just the exec, because before with the exec, like the execs would go, right? And now that council is, well, the board, and then so now we need to make sure, like, since there's way more councils, like how do we make sure if there's like requests to fill, if there's certain things that come up? Because usually when I get these things, I send them to exec, and then if there's any folks from exec want to go, but then, or if there isn't, then forward it to council. And for some, we might need, for some, there might be an influx of like, you know, people who want to attend, and we just have to be like aware of that. So how do we make sure that it's within budget, and that if folks are attending, like what would be the process for that? Like, let's say you might get 1 or 2 people, which would be fine. But then now that it's in person and there might be travel accommodations and all this, like what are the request forms like, and they're filling them out. So these are just like logistical things I think we need to be thinking about that we haven't really had to deal with yet because it's been online. And now with the change to council, a lot of these like little things like might need to be changed. So those are just things that I'm thinking about like moving forward, especially within the next year.
Matt, that might fall under your portfolio more. So I was wondering if you have the capacity to work on creating those templates, or work with Ella probably, or have assigned this task to Ella of creating these logistics of how to possibly apply for a conference, sign up for one, the reports thereafter. Could you do that, Matt?
I think also, like Corbett said, there are like current templates, so I can help Corbett look at like this and maybe develop like a new, like how we have jot forms, right? Like if there's something, like if there's a conference that's coming out that's like happening, then have a jot form assigned with that, and then bring that. So we could come up with some formal processes to kind of go about how, you know, folks attend like conferences or like, you know, development sessions that might be like outside of like what we're doing already if we can't bring them in. And then this might have to be also added as a discussion item on council and then listed somewhere how we deal with this like internally. And then, yeah, working with Ella on this as well. Because I think Ella like will be, after we're not here, like Ella will be the one to like follow this process, right? Like to make sure that it gets followed and that folks know like why this is implemented, why they're doing it, and this is like makes it easier for everybody for years to come, especially moving back in person.
That sounds like a great idea. We can put this under like projects for you folks. Like, let's say you're filling out your work report, this could be considered like a, what is this? Yeah, I don't have Notion open up right now, but we can add it in there for projects. So that's a good one. Okay, that's cool. That sounds good. Almost has a question. I was wondering if anyone can answer. She's asking in the chat, is there a possibility of 2 people attending on different days, depending on what is being discussed? Matt.
I think in most cases, like, that would be like, well, it depends too, because if 2 people could depend 2 different days, you're still paying for 2 people, right, to be there. So I think like those are things that we'll have to look at like logistically to be like, well, if you're signing up for this and you're getting paid to go, because when we're paying for the accommodations and you're getting paid to be there for work, you should be able to go there the full day or 3 days, like whatever, and that should be just an expectation, like, because you won't be attending meetings, you won't be attending like whatever, and that'll be considered like your work. So if you can't go for the full 3 days or whatever, how many amount it is, then you probably should just like really consider that and make room for somebody else. And also that'll require like a report as well, right? Unless if it's like something really specific to like your portfolio, but my recommendation for people who sign up is like, if you can't attend like the 3 days, this is going to make up for all your work and things like that, for the days that you won't be here.
And Corbett?
Yeah, I was just backtracking emails and stuff related to this. Currently the planned dates are October 8th to the 11th, which is Thanksgiving weekend. And so that might impact people's ability to attend or not based on family commitments and whatnot. But the 11th, it's basically Friday to Monday. However, the Monday is that checkout day, so honestly not much is going on. So the events would be from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And so we'd have to check on that, people's availabilities and such. Our AGM won't be until like the last week of October. So that won't impact things much for anyone who needs to be, say, involved in the planning or whatnot. So, and campaigning and such, because it's somewhat earlier in the October, this event. So that'll be okay.
Okay. Matt, once you have more information, can you just forward it to exec? And then if you want to bring it to council and submit a discussion item, please and thank you. Okay, sounds good. Next discussion item is 9.5, leave of absence policy gaps. Corbett, I don't know if it was you or me who submitted this.
I submitted it.
Okay.
So this is just starting a conversation around our leave of policy, our leave of absence policy. It was for a long time, for a number of years, we didn't have it. There was no real like rules around, board members taking time off, and it was basically approved to whatever board approved what. And so it's really consistent. And my perspective from outsider and past board members kind of could be open to abuse. So we ended up bringing back the leave of absence policy back in last year, as when we changed a lot of our policies and governance structures. But it's also very like, it's only one option. It's either you take the time off and you don't get paid, or you work through it. And that's what I've been finding over the last couple of years in my roles, is it's not a very flexible system. And I think it forces council members and executives especially to make hard choices, and maybe not choices that are not best for themselves and best for the society. So I want to start this conversation especially with the Oversight Committee, about fleshing out our leave of absence policy to help mirror some aspects of, being able to have more options for things like bereavement or other scenario, mental health situations or whatever, where we can find alternative solutions that hopefully, Because what you also see a lot of other student sites that have similar kind of yes or no kind of binary options is eventually, execs just have to resign because often for like mental health reasons or any number of reasons. And it just doesn't seem that, like, we have in our society, large society as well as I hopefully now here, more options for our employees. So we should also have options for ourselves, and not just execs, but also, counselors will have bad periods too, or need extra support sometimes as well. And we need to be flexible for them as well. The society, SFS should be designed to be more flexible.
I think I'm in support of this, depending on like where you take it, just because that taking a leave of absence off of work is a really big deal because you won't be getting paid, and some people, this is their only source of income for their jobs, and they have to make difficult decisions, having to choose whether or not getting paid or continue to burn out to the point of exhaustion. This can include, I agree, for bereavement, mental health situations, but even taking care of your own family and what you need to do and show up for your family. Would we have to take this to governance committee as well to implement this into policy? Corbett?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe ultimately it would have to develop as a policy because, like, we're not classified as employees, so we don't fall under Employment Standards Act or any of those kinds of things. So we would have to kind of, if we want to have some mirroring structure around that, then we'd have to develop a policy, I believe. I can work with Ella and Aisha to get advice initially on about this, but I think this is just one way we can go about making things a bit better in the SFS.
Thank you, Corbett and Matt.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to add that I think, in terms of like how we see ourselves like as a council in general, I feel like the decisions we make like for our staff and like even for like the council itself is pretty equitable, and we base it off of that. Like we support like like unionized workers, and we support like labor that is like reflected like equitably. Like that's what I feel like we believe in, and I feel like if we're taking those approaches, we need to ensure that we're taking frameworks that are based in supporting folks like that we work with. And this isn't just for like this year, but this is for like moving forward in terms of like the support that we need, especially if we are pushing to have like centering Black and Indigenous voices, and also like people of color like on council and on exec. Like the labor that we do is a lot and should be like supported. And for marginalized like community members, like they do face a lot more barriers in terms of taking on like work in these positions. And I feel like it's just a good way to, because like we don't have like benefits, and we don't have things that like protect us, like especially like as students, and we're expected, especially as execs, like we're expected to work a specific amount of hours. But if something comes up like with in terms of like community, like if people don't have like the capacity, and as we've seen like just within the short term that we've been in our positions, how many things have come up already, and how we've needed to like support and making sure that people are able to feel supported while doing their work. Like we can't help other people if we don't have the supports in place, like help ourselves to make sure that we're doing our job like effectively and adequately, and making hitting our goals like within our portfolio or even weekly and things like that. So I think it's just a really big consideration to make, not only for like this year's council, but moving forward, to make sure that there are options, even in terms of like how do we frame that. Like if you need to take a leave of absence just because like you need like vacation, like there would be different requirements. Say like, okay, well, there's no extenuating circumstance, so you might have to take that like without pay, which makes sense, because you're just taking like a leave. But if there's other things happening with extenuating circumstances or bereavement, or like mental health, like there will need to be really specific like language around that in policy, which outlines that, but also recognizing that that policy can't put in barriers, like in terms of like documentation, which some might be needed, which makes sense, but documentation is a barrier for example, when I've had to withdraw with extenuating circumstances and people are asking me to submit an obituary to prove that this is why I'm taking leave. Like those are barriers, and keeping those in mind if we're going to be asking future execs who may be Black or maybe Indigenous, and asking that of them is also a little bit like invasive. So how do we frame that in a way that is equitable and not causing more stress and causing more harm, but also for keeping into account like that accountability piece that, like, you know, we have seen in some cases that people have taken advantage. So there's like a fine line like between that, but I feel like there can be a way that we can discuss it further, and if there could be like a report back to exec when this discussion is furthered, and also like on governance and things like that. So that's just those are my initial thoughts around it, at least.
Thanks, Matt. I agree with your comments because we're trying to make have these seats be filled by Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and we can't do good work if we're burnt out all of the time, and we need to protect ourselves as well so that we can help our communities and do that in a good way. I think Corbett looks like he's a little bit busy right now. I don't know what is happening. It's like someone's in the office. Corbett, it looks like you already emailed OCEO chair to have a meeting to start this discussion. Who is OCEO?
OCEO is the Oversight Committee on Executive Officers. And the chair is Devin, the vice chair of council. So they are going to, I've been slotted in for their August 3rd meeting, so next Tuesday. Or this Tuesday rather, now technically. So, and I'll start that conversation.
I'll be on my leave of absence, so I was wondering if you can reiterate what we talked about in this exec meeting to that committee. Okay, sounds good, thank you. So now we'll be moving to in camera. Be it resolved to go in camera for the remainder of the meeting. Can I have a mover? I'll move this motion. Can I have a seconder?
Matt?
Matt seconds. Corbett, could you stop the recording now, please? Okay, we'll go to item 11, X camera. The motion reads as be it resolved to go X camera. May I have a mover?
Corbett moves.
And I will second. Seeking unanimous consent. Sorry, is there any discussion on this? Okay, seeking unanimous consent. If you choose to abstain or dissent, please use the Zoom raise hand function. Okay, cool. And there's no Q&A because there's no guest here in this meeting. We'll go on to section 13, announcements. 13.1, VP Events and Student Affairs, Jess de la Cruz will be taking an approved leave of absence from Monday, August 2 to Friday, August 6 due to personal mental health reasons. We'll go to item 15, adjournment. The motion reads as be it resolved to adjourn the meeting at 12:15 p.m. Nice, I'm right on time. Can I have a mover?
Matt?
Can I have a seconder?
Corbett.
Cool, sounds good. Bye, everyone.
Get to have a vote.
Okay. Seeking unanimous consent to end the meeting? Damn, that's a funny recording. Okay. Since no one is abstaining or dissenting, the motion carries as unanimously. Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.